That's for sure.
I learn something new all the time.
And being able to manage different personalities. You know, we were talking earlier about that producer and that connector. Neither's right or wrong.
No.
Neither's better than the other. No. They're just different.
They're just different. Exactly.
And the communication with that is different. And when you were talking about that, I agree. I think your communication skills, you have to figure out, are they a visual person? Do they listen and hear? Are they a note person that's going to have the details structured down? Are they going to be that person that just put me in it and show it to me?
Hands on.
You know, that's kind of like in our office ourselves. We get a new software program or a new something, and I'm like, I'm not computer. I don't get all that stuff. Can somebody who gets it sit down with me and just show me how to do this stuff?
Absolutely.
So I don't waste my time, hours and hours, slowly reading something, looking at a computer, and putting the pieces together. Just show me, and I'll get it. So I think that is a good place that you're talking about.
Being able to identify within each person
in that staff, and taking that time, because it does. Some people do learn quick. Some don't. Some learn quick, impress you, and in 90 days, you're like, did you get amnesia last night?
It happens sometimes.
What happened?
Yeah.
You've been doing this for months and fantastic, and all of a sudden you're falling apart. How do you say that to a person without motivating them?
Yeah, you have to find out what their thought processes are. You know, find out what they respond to. So, you can't identify where to put a person just within 2 weeks. It's just not possible. Not to properly have them in a position that's going to benefit them and benefit the office.
That's very true. And that's effective.
Yes. Finding
where they're going to be most effective, and it works. Have you, in this I'm curious about that. When you do that process, how long, well, I guess that's a hard question. How long is it that before you're hiring them that you figure out that? Or do you hire them and then just, hey, this is where we're going to eventually get you?
I don't think it's necessarily quantifiable in a time sense. So we will spend a lot of time training them in different areas. So, primarily within the first few weeks, you kind of get an idea about their personality, kind of how fast they're picking things up, what things are they thriving in, what things are they not. And so you can kind of figure out where they might be best suited and, focus on that for their training regimen. But I think that it's just not always a good idea to do that immediately right off the bat. So give that some time.
How do you avoid overwhelming them?
I like to let them master one task at a time. So I might show you a couple of things, but I'm going to try to focus on letting you get really good and really mastering the first thing. Then we're going to move on to the next thing. So I still might expose you to a few other small things that may not require as much training and investing. But I'm still going to let you sort of, not necessarily master, but I'm going to let you get really good at that first thing before we move on and start overwhelming you with all of these things, because it's a lot to learn.
I think so. And I think probably a lot of the chiropractors that are listening to this today go, well, yeah, if you have a full staff, you can do this. But what if I don't have any staff, or I only have one staff member? How do I go through that process and train someone in the slow steps you're talking about? Do you have any advice on a doctor? Because I know you coach offices that don't have any staff, and then or they're in between staff.
Yeah, you definitely will have to invest the time in your staff meetings and your role playing and your training. So that all ties back into investing in developing that CA. So it is going to take a little time. That brand new CA, most likely you're going to need them to know how to answer the phone properly, and you're going to need them to know how to take money and schedule appointments.
Now, how many times are you going to show them as a doctor?
As the doctor, how many times?
That's a trick question, I know.
Yeah, that I'm not qualified to answer that question.
Well, I said that because that's what I hear so often of doctor going, well, I showed them once. I showed them how to do that. Or I gave them the phone script and said, okay, you role play this at home.
No, you've got to be in that with them.
There's a time in your office, docs, that not only are you investing in what you're learning and you're doing for your patients and health, but you have double duty.
Yep.
And as an owner of a practice, you have to take that responsibility and say, okay, I've got new staff, so I'm having to double up, and I have to be creative and find the time to
you have
make
to make
sure.
the time. Yeah.
I worked years back ago with a doctor that was doing a new CA, and we have a phone regiment that we use, how we answer our phones. And that doctor, I was so impressed with him because he hired that staff, and they had an afternoon they invested in training, and he did this phone script, and the young lady would say okay or and every time she did, they'd start over. Ring, ring. And she'd do it. And as soon as she'd say the word okay,
start from the
back
beginning
to the beginning, going ring, ring. But what really impressed me is by the time they got through with that, and it was several hours, those filler words were gone.
Yep.
But the neat thing is he was willing to do the same thing. So they twisted the role play, and he became the CA answering the call, and she was the patient. And if he messed up, they had to do it. So he really set a great example for her of this is what we do together. And he invested in it for himself. He had to be as good with it as she was, and she stayed with that office for a long time, and they had great success with that. So I encourage when chiropractors are looking at that is that invest that time.
It will be worth it in so many ways.